instructions to connect up Railo on Resin. So I need to find the resin.conf file, and I have a little shortcut up here on my desktop under here. So this is the resin.conf file, and it says in the documentation that I need to find this jvm-arg block, and I need to add a new entry in there. So I'm going to copy that one, jvm-arg, and here we can see the list of JVM args, and I've put a comment in here where I'm going to add it. So now I know that this JVM arg is there for FusionDebug, and I can find that easily later. And this 8000, that is the TCP port number that FusionDebug is going to use to communicate with my application server. So that port needs to be a free port number and one that's open between my development environment and the server. So I'm going to save that file and then go back and restart my Railo server. So let's just leave that to run for a second, and Railo is now restarted. Okay, brilliant. So my Railo server is running up here, and I have a web page that I've already called on the Railo server. So I'm just going to refresh that page, and we can see that I can still access the server. And in my Eclipse environment, I have these two projects. So I'm going to open up this one and also open up that one. Now, the first thing that I want to do is I will have a look at this index.cfm page. So that's the one that we've just been calling. So you notice it doesn't have any ColdFusion code in, it's just pure HTML. And the first thing you need to do with FusionDebug is you need to connect it to your application server. And we do that by setting up a new debug profile. So using this drop down under the debug menu, I click open debug dialog, and I can then choose here under FusionDebug, I can click new, and I get new configuration. And then let's name that by saying FusionDebug Railo Resin, and I need to choose what type of server it is, so I choose that it's a Railo server. My Railo server is running on my own local machine, so I choose localhost, and the port number is 8000. Also, we have a tick box here for whether the server is running on Windows, and that's for case sensitivity. So my server is Windows, so I'll leave that ticked. And then we need to tell FusionDebug where it can find the source code on my local machine, my development machine, and on my application server. So if I go into here, source code lookup, and Railo web server root, I need to tell it where the folders of my Railo web server root CF Eclipse project is related to on the server. So this folder up here is the Eclipse project, and this folder here is on the server. So I'm just going to get the path from here by clicking there. So in this folder, the web apps / root folder, that is where all the files that are in this CF Eclipse project live on the server. So that's how we map between the local development environment and a potentially remote server. So I click add there, and that adds that to the list. I also have another project here which I want to use, and this is part of what we call the source code lookup. So on many servers you will have files that are in many different locations, potentially outside of the web root. They could be in many different locations, and to demonstrate this we've just created another folder here called my special include folder, and I'm going to copy the path of that and give it the give this project, the source code lookup demo project, give that a reference in here. So I click add and click apply there, and I now have this extra profile here called FusionDebug Railo Resin, which we've set up. and if I click debug, and then that will have connected to the server. So under here, under the perspectives, if I choose FusionDebug perspective, we see here that FusionDebug is now connected, and that means that I'm now able to start using FusionDebug to debug my code. So let's have a look at this page again, and if I refresh, we'll see that it just runs as normal. And let's have a look at this first demo, conditional breakpoints. And we can see some output here. We have a table with 2 columns, ID and label, and it just runs through the alphabet there. Notice as well that I have the debugging output on. And to make this a little bit easier to see, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to split my screen like so. So let's have a look at that file. So we're inside the 01 folder and index.cfm. So here you can see my code. It actually does a query against the database and then just outputs it on the screen. So conditional breakpoints, what actually are they? Well, first of all, we need to explain what a breakpoint is. And a breakpoint allows you to pause execution at any line in your ColdFusion code so that you can see what's happening. So I'm going to do that, apply one of those by clicking right button and toggle line breakpoint. And you'll notice that now I have a little indicator that says that I have a breakpoint defined there. And under this window here, under breakpoints, we'll see that it's now listed. Next, if I refresh this URL, we'll see that it still stays loading, and you'll also notice that I get an extra entry here under the debug window that says that execution has stopped, and also it's highlighted this line. And what that means is that it's actually paused execution for me at this point. And the most useful thing that we can do is we can actually start stepping through line by line of the code, and that's done with this button up here, which is called Step Over. And if I just click on that, and we'll see that the highlighted line moves to the next one. So it's going to follow through my code with me. So if I just click through this a few times, we'll see that it now does a CF flush, and we'll see on the output in the browser that it's actually flushed back out to the browser. So it's my same code. I haven't had to add any extra information into my code, haven't had to change any code whatsoever. I've just added a small parameter change to my application server, and I can do this step debugging. So again, if I click through, then we see here that I can click through this loop and we can watch it executing in time. Now that's very useful for me because I can now see the exact flow of a program. So whether it's got lots of CF-if statements or CF switches, no matter what's in there, I can see what the flow of execution is. And under variables here, then at every point when the execution is paused, I can see all of the scopes of variables. So here in my page, we're actually looking at variable scope. We can see here that I have a query called myQuery, and I can see the columns and I can see all the different rows inside this query, so I can see exactly the data that I'm dealing with. We'll come back and have a look at that later. But for the moment, it's just important to know that I can see variables. Now, because you can see variables and you can trace the execution flow of the program, what becomes interesting then is that when you get these situations where you're looping over many times, then you will actually want to maybe stop at a certain row. So let's say, for example, I want to only stop at row 20. First of all, let's resume the execution of the page. So if I press resume, what it will do is it will continue execution until it hits another breakpoint. And it's hit another breakpoint by coming back to the same place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to toggle that line breakpoint and turn that breakpoint off. I'm then going to resume execution, and we'll see that the page completes. So let's take this use case of I want to stop only